Inside Rikers Island, the brutal reality of America's most notorious jail. Before we begin, subscribe if you're drawn to the darkest corners of real crime, like this video if you believe the truth always finds its way out, and comment below what you think really happened inside these walls. The sirens were already echoing across the East River when the lights inside the housing unit flickered twice and went out. In the darkness, someone screamed. Correction officers rushed toward the noise, boots pounding against concrete floors that had absorbed decades of fear. By the time the backup generator kicked in, the damage was done. In a narrow cell on the second tier, 23-year-old Mateo Alvarez lay motionless on the steel bunk, his orange uniform soaked in blood. Mateo wasn't supposed to be there. He had been arrested just 3 weeks earlier on a nonviolent charge, awaiting trial. His family insisted it was a misunderstanding. His public defender had filed motions for reduced bail. But in the early hours of that morning, inside one of the most notorious jail complexes in America, Mateo became another statistic. The officers said it was an inmate fight. A dispute over commissary. Quick, sudden, unavoidable. But when Detective Lauren Walsh from the NYPD's Special Investigations Division stepped onto the tier later that morning, she didn't see chaos. She saw control. The other inmates were unusually quiet. Too quiet. Rikers Island had a reputation known far beyond New York. International headlines had painted it as overcrowded, understaffed, and volatile. Civil rights groups had raised alarms for years. Yet inside this specific housing unit, something felt organized. Mateo's cell showed minimal signs of struggle. The mattress was barely disturbed. His personal letters, neatly stacked under his pillow, were untouched. On the concrete floor near the bunk, Walsh noticed a faint smear leading toward the bars. Someone had opened that cell. Correction Captain Raymond Doyle insisted the electronic logs would prove no doors were accessed during lockdown hours. "These systems don't fail," he said, jaw tight. "Not like that." But when the IT team pulled the access report, there was a gap. Exactly 11 minutes. 11 missing minutes in the security system between 1:13 a.m. and 1:24 a.m. Power fluctuation, Doyle offered quickly. Happens sometimes. Walsh didn't respond. She had worked enough institutional cases to recognize rehearsed explanations. Mateo's cellmate, Darren Cole, claimed he had been in the shower when it happened. Surveillance footage confirmed he entered the communal bathroom at 1:10 a.m. and returned at 1:26 a.m., visibly shaken. But the camera angle didn't show Mateo's cell directly. It showed the corridor. And during those 11 missing minutes, the corridor cameras had glitched. Across the Atlantic, European media outlets had begun running stories about conditions inside American detention centers. Human rights observers had criticized systemic failures. Walsh knew this case wouldn't stay local. It couldn't. Mateo's older sister, Sofia Alvarez, arrived at the precinct that afternoon, her voice trembling but firm. She handed Walsh a folded letter Mateo had mailed just 2 days before his death. "He said he was scared," Sofia whispered. "He said he found something he wasn't supposed to see." Inside the letter, Mateo described witnessing a late-night meeting between a correction officer and 2 high-ranking inmates known to control contraband distribution in the unit. He wrote about envelopes being exchanged. About certain cells being unlocked after hours. He said if he testified about what he saw, he'd be transferred, Sofia said. He thought it meant protection. Walsh felt the weight of it settle. A potential internal corruption scheme. Inmate hierarchies enabled by staff. Silenced witnesses. Back on the island, forensic analysts made another discovery. Under Mateo's fingernails they found skin cells. Not from Darren Cole. Not from any registered inmate in the unit. The DNA belonged to someone employed at the facility. When the lab confirmed the match late that evening, Walsh stared at the name on the report. Correction Officer Ethan Mercer. A 5-year veteran with no prior disciplinary record. But when investigators went to question Mercer the next morning, his locker was empty. His uniform was gone. And security logs showed he had clocked out at 1:12 a.m., 1 minute before the system went dark. By the time officers reached his apartment in Queens, the place had been cleared out. No furniture. No clothes. No trace. Only one thing left behind on the kitchen counter. A burner phone. And when they powered it on, a single unsent text draft appeared on the screen. "They know about the basement." The word basement didn't appear on any official blueprint of the facility. When Detective Lauren Walsh brought the burner phone into the conference room, the air shifted. Senior officials from the Department of Corrections sat stiffly across from her, insisting there was no underground level in that housing complex. The buildings on Rikers Island were old, but they were documented, regulated, inspected. Storage areas, one administrator admitted carefully. Maintenance tunnels. Nothing operational. But Mateo Alvarez had written about late-night meetings. About cells opening after hours. And now a correction officer had vanished, leaving behind a message that suggested something hidden beneath the surface. Walsh pushed for immediate access. The warden hesitated. By late afternoon, escorted by a tight-lipped facility supervisor, Walsh descended a narrow service staircase at the end of an unmarked corridor. The air grew cooler with each step. The hum of generators echoed faintly through concrete walls that looked older than the rest of the structure. At the bottom was a steel door with no placard. It wasn't locked. Inside, the room looked like forgotten infrastructure. Exposed pipes, industrial shelving, outdated filing cabinets. But on a folding table in the corner sat something that didn't belong there. A laptop, powered off but still warm. Someone had been here recently. Forensics was called in. The laptop's hard drive revealed spreadsheets documenting inmate movements, unofficial transfers between housing units that didn't match official logs. Names were highlighted. Notes were attached. Certain inmates were marked as compliant. Others were labeled problem. Mateo's name had appeared on the list 2 days before he died. Status, watch. The files went deeper. Payments tracked through digital wallets. Small amounts routed through shell accounts. The pattern suggested something coordinated, privileges granted in exchange for silence. Access traded for loyalty. And Officer Ethan Mercer's name appeared repeatedly under authorization columns. Walsh felt the case widening beneath her feet. That night, Sofia Alvarez called again, her voice tight with fear. A man had approached her outside her apartment building in the Bronx. He hadn't threatened her directly. He had simply told her to let the system handle it, and suggested that grieving families sometimes made mistakes when they talked too much. Walsh assigned patrol to monitor Sofia's building. The intimidation confirmed what she already suspected. This wasn't a random act of violence inside a volatile jail. It was containment. Meanwhile, inside Rikers Island, tension simmered. Word spread that investigators were digging into internal operations. Inmates who had spoken to detectives requested protective custody. One of them, a soft-spoken man named Jerome Tate, claimed he had seen Officer Mercer escort certain inmates to the lower level during overnight shifts. They'd come back different, Jerome said quietly during his recorded interview. Like they had something on someone? When pressed for details, Jerome hesitated. Files? He finally whispered. They had files down there. Records on guards. On inmates. Things that could ruin lives. Before Walsh could schedule a follow-up interview, Jerome was found unconscious in his cell after an apparent fall from the upper bunk. Officials called it an accident. Walsh didn't believe in coincidences. Forensic review of Jerome's medical report revealed bruising inconsistent with a simple fall. But the security footage from his housing unit during the critical window had, once again, glitched for 9 minutes. Another gap. Another blackout. Back at the precinct, the tech team cracked more data from the basement laptop. Hidden within encrypted folders were scanned complaint reports, allegations of excessive force, misconduct, contraband facilitation. Some reports had been formally filed years earlier and mysteriously closed without action. Next to several of those reports were annotations, resolved or handled. It wasn't just about controlling inmates. It was about leverage. Whoever managed that basement operation had gathered dirt on everyone. Guards, supervisors, even administrators. Insurance against exposure. Late that evening, Walsh received a call from an unexpected source, Captain Raymond Doyle. His voice was strained. "You need to come back to the island," he said. "Now." When Walsh arrived, Doyle led her to the facility's central control room. An internal audit had just been triggered. During the review, they discovered something that made even the hardened captain swallow hard. The security override codes used during both blackout windows didn't belong to Officer Mercer. They belonged to someone higher. Someone with full system clearance. Walsh stared at the authorization trail on the monitor. The credentials traced back to an executive-level account, one rarely used, reserved for emergencies. The name attached to it made the room go silent. Warden Thomas Bradley. And at that exact moment, as investigators tried to reach him for questioning, his assistant reported that he had left the island early that afternoon for a private meeting. No one knew where he was. But an hour later, a patrol unit spotted the warden's official vehicle abandoned near a marina in Brooklyn. The engine was cold. The driver's door was open, and on the passenger seat sat a thick manila folder labeled with a single word: exposure.